Take your pick, one or all three, calmer, wiser, and happier. It's time for Zen Commuter, episode 878. Good morning, travelers, and welcome to your morning Zen Commute. I am your host, Tom Walters, and this is Zen Commuter, your Monday through Friday podcast aimed at moving you forward peacefully, helping you live a calmer, more satisfying life. Man, oh man, I am more than excited to share with you an interview I had with Giovanni Densman. He is the founder of liveanddare.com, a writer, and of course, a meditation teacher. In fact, that is his main focus, meditation and spirituality. If you remember last week, I read to you an article that talked about the 6 reasons why you don't meditate and how you can change that. Well, he is the author of that, and I think I mentioned that in the post, and I told you that I was going to reach out to him. Well, guess what? I reached out to him, and he was kind enough to say, yeah, sure, I'd love to be on the show. In our interview, you'll hear how he came to meditation, and we'll also talk about how he and I are both working along the same goal, and that is to bring meditation to as many people as possible, taking away the stigma, the misperceptions, the myths. But you'll hear all about it right now. Giovanni, why don't we start right now, as we always do, letting listeners know a little bit about your life, what you do for fun, what you do for an air quotes job, all that fun stuff.
Well, I'm an author and a meditation teacher, so my life goes around reading, writing, meditating, talking to people. And it wasn't always like this. I had a full-time job in something unrelated for almost 10 years. But eventually, I was able to, because my blog grew so well and people were interested in what I had to teach, I was able to finally let go of the job and just do this full-time.
That is so awesome. So if you've been meditating since 1999, where did it all start? How did you find out about meditation? Did somebody lead you to meditation? Did you find it on your own? What was a series of events that had that happen?
Well, it's interesting. At that time, I was 14 years old, and I was a very anxious and restless person. I think looking back, I can say I had ADHD. Uh-huh. But that was not the reason why I started meditating. I just had this thirst for exploring what else is there to life, exploring how I can go to the next level as a human being, how I can learn to master myself. And then I started reading first Paulo Coelho, and then all sorts of books on metaphysical and religion and meditation, and trying out things on my own. And then I discovered a workshop being held in my city on meditation, and I signed up. And that night, through a short 10-minute guided meditation, I experienced something very special. For the first time ever, I was at peace. I was content in the present moment. Nothing to run after, nothing to run away from, no anxiety. Just happy and still, here and now.
That is awesome. And that was
with that experience.
That was at 14?
Yes.
That's awesome.
And with that experience, I told myself I would continue practicing meditation for every day of my life, and so I did.
You were a very advanced 14-year-old, my friend. I was reading my comic books and playing kickball with my buddies.
Well, I was also doing playing video games and doing other things, but at the same time, I had this thirst in me. I was not happy with the world I was seeing, with the life I was seeing, and I had this thirst for something more. And only by practicing meditation and then reading about spirituality and searching for other philosophies, other ways of seeing life, that I found a greater meaning, a greater context for my existence.
Wow, that is absolutely awesome. I know the profound moments I've had in meditation, but to think that you had those at 14, that's absolutely awesome. Now, here's a question, though. What was meditating like back in 1999? In 82, when I started meditating, it was thought of as weird. People didn't even know what it was. They thought you were a witch. They thought you were a monk, and people didn't even know what it was. Was it the same in 1999, or was it beginning to become a bit more accepted? probably not the same level that it is right now, but tell us about that. What was it like learning how to meditate in 1999?
Well, I was raised and born in Brazil, and that's where I was living in 1999. And at that time, it was not popular. So if I would say that I meditate, many people would ask, what is that? You don't hear that question these days. Everyone seems to know.
Which is kind of cool.
Yeah. So, yeah, it was something kind of weird, kind of unique. My friends didn't get it. My parents didn't get it. My parents thought I was just wasting my time, sitting still in my room, staring at the wall.
Yeah, I can understand where people would think that was odd back then. They certainly did in 82. But you know as well as I do that people even now think that sitting and being still is odd, that if you're not moving around, that if you're not doing something, if you're not producing, then you're not adding to the world.
It's interesting that you mentioned producing, because I think that meditation was one of the main ingredients for me to be very productive in all the jobs that I've undertaken, and studies as well. Like to be able to do in 3 hours what other employees would take 8 hours. And that's because of the focus, the clarity of thought, the ability to deal with distractions that comes through a serious meditation practice.
And of course, I know that we should go into meditations without expectations, but I wish there was a way that we could quantify that for people so that they understood that if you're too busy to meditate, that means you really need to meditate. Because, as you know, you can work for an hour having not meditated and be just so thrown about by distractions. Not one instance, but if you didn't meditate or never meditated, that you spend 1 hour working and you probably get about 10 minutes of productivity because your mind is just flooded with so much stuff. But if you meditate and learn how to filter out distractions, how to be focused, how to be centered, that hour is an hour of flow, which is awesome. And I've told my listeners on several occasions that there have been times in the past, probably years ago, where I basically would start my day, and if my morning routine got a little behind schedule, I'd think about missing my meditation. I'd be like, you know what, I'll just catch it later on in the evening or some other time. And as you might expect, my day went to hell in a handbasket because I didn't start it off centered. I didn't start it off with an intention. I didn't start it off calmly. So obviously, ever since then, I make it a total non-negotiable, meaning if you start work late, then you start work late. But you never start work, you never start your day until you've meditated. And when I tell that to some people that are really invested in meditation, they kind of get it. And the people that are on the fence, they're kind of like, yeah, but dude, you really don't get it. I'm a busy guy or gal. There's a lot going on. So sometimes it falls on deaf ears, goes right over somebody's head, and sometimes it doesn't. But you know what? No worries. It's all good. Everybody will figure out what they need to figure out when they figure it out. Weak explanation, if you ask me.
I know that life can get quite busy, but for the great majority of people that say, I don't have time to meditate, I think they have time for Facebook. I think they have time for Netflix.
Oh, yeah.
I think they have time for other things like that. So how come they don't have time to meditate?
Yeah, exactly. And I kind of walk the line. I never want to say to people, I'm like, come on, really? You pee away time, just like you said, with Facebook, with video games, with Netflix. I'm like, everybody's got time. If you make it a priority, you'll make it a priority. You find time for things that are important. But I don't want to be that guy kind of pushing it down their throats. People will find it when they're supposed to, if they're supposed to. It's all good.
So the thing is, once they have clarity about what meditation can do for them, then they will find the motivation.
I think one thing that sets people back, and I totally agree, I think one thing that sets people back here in the United States is that there's a very goal-oriented mentality. There's got to be an end plan. There's got to be a project plan. There's got to be a systematic increase in success. And if they don't see it immediately, then it's worthless. It's useless. You have to either go back to the drawing board or abandon it altogether. And I would imagine it's probably the same in Australia. You can certainly correct me if I'm wrong. But people expect to say, okay, if I start now and if I meditate for 6 weeks, I expect to see this or I want to see that. And if I don't, then I think I'll just scrap it altogether. If I can't see it in a significant amount of time or even a little bit of time, more to that I'm just not going to do it. It doesn't have any benefit for me.
So I think there are two ways to go about that. The first is to to realize that meditation is a force multiplier. Just like sleep, it's a force multiplier in your life. So if you sleep only 5 hours, and on the other week, every day you sleep 7 hours and a half or 8 hours, everything else that you do on your waking time will be better, easier, less stressful, more effective.
Right.
And the same thing with meditation. If you spend 20 good minutes in meditation every morning, everything else in your day will be more smooth.
And your body will be
not
healthy.
from the beginning, right? Maybe not the first time you meditate, but you need to keep doing it. If you do it daily, so the research shows that if you do it daily for 30 minutes or twice a day for 20 minutes, after 6 weeks, there are already changes in the structure of your brain.
Right.
So this is happening. Maybe during those 6 weeks you're meditating, you're feeling like I'm not progressing, but if you take a brain scan, you'll see like, okay, something's different.
And I tell people that I teach, I tell my listeners on the show that you need to go into it without expectation. I think so many people go in thinking that I want to be enlightened. I want to have every thought except one leave my mind. I want to be calm. I want it to happen right now. And of course, I tell them it will happen when it's supposed to happen. Obviously, just like you said, there are some changes in your brain after 6 to 8 weeks, but you shouldn't go in with that expectation. You should just let it happen.
Just focus on the process.
Exactly.
And the results will come. Yeah. If you get obsessed about the results, then you'll get frustrated pretty quickly.
Absolutely.
And then your motivation disappears and your practice is gone.
Yeah, and then it's gone. End of story.
Yeah. But also there is something that people can pay attention to, the before and the after of meditation. Mm-hmm. So even though the main results may take time, may take a few weeks or months of daily practice for you to start feeling, if you just pay attention to how you're feeling in your body, in your mind, in your heart, the moment you sit for meditation, and how you feel 20 minutes after when you're coming out, then you feel that you're more at ease.
Right.
You're more peaceful. You're more well. Right? So if you can train yourself to realize that benefit that happens with every time you practice, then you can keep the motivation going.
I absolutely agree. That's why I tell people meditation is a practice. It's not a perfection. It's not a journey with a destination. It's something you're always going to do. I've had meditations as recently as last week where I had to keep bringing my attention back to my breath. Did I get all jazzed up about it and say, I'm screwing it up? I'm like, no. It's just some days are going to be diamonds and some days are going to be coal, as Dolly Parton would say. You just have to keep at it. You have to keep that consistency. And it doesn't matter if you are a proficient meditator or somebody that just started. There will be days where it's going to be easier to redirect your mind, and some days it's going to be tougher. But as you continue to do it more and more, those instances of needing to constantly redirect or refocus your thoughts is going to become less and less as you become more and more, air quotes, proficient. And of course, I tell people that are just starting out and listeners, just look for the things that are already happening. You can't meditate, even your first time meditating, without feeling different, feeling better.
Most people feel it even after the first meditation practice. They just feel like, okay, at least I'm more relaxed.
Exactly.
And if our body could speak, our body would probably say, thank you for this. I needed this.
Exactly. Oh, thank God. It took you forever to just stop.
The other thing it's important to understand is that meditation is an exercise of willpower. Not in the sense that it takes willpower for you to have the discipline to sit every day, although that's part of it.
Right.
But in the sense that, let's say that the meditation technique you're following is focusing on your breath, right? So you put your attention on your breath, and 2 seconds after, it's out of there. The moment you notice there, then you put your attention on your breath again. So every time you're redirecting your attention back to where you want it to be,
right,
that's a micro exercise of willpower on a very subtle level inside your mind. You're exercising your willpower hundreds of times every time you meditate. So as a result, your ability to keep your attention where you want it to be in daily life, your ability to have your mind be in the state you want it to be when you're outside of meditation, that will increase. And that gives you benefits in all areas of your life. Everything else in life is easier if you have strong willpower, and if you have knowledge of your mind, and if you have the ability to change your states of mind by your will everything else becomes easier. Relationships, achieving your goals, going to the gym every day, whatever you want to do becomes so much easier.
I think beginners have some challenges because they think every time they need to redirect their focus to their breath that they're doing it wrong. That's a huge misperception I think a lot of people have. And a lot of times people get incredibly frustrated, even to the point of quitting, because they think they're, quote, doing it wrong. But one thing I point out is that regardless of how many times you need to redirect your attention back to your breath, every time that you do, whether it be initially or even if you've been practicing for years, you're changing your brain. Every time you make that leap from following a thought to redirecting your attention back to your breath, you're making a small change in your brain, and it adds up. So even the times when you're not meditating, when you're out in the world and something happens unexpectedly, you don't just fly off the handle. You don't just blow up. You see something happen, and instead of just reacting, you have that ability to just stop and then prepare a response, as opposed to simply reacting from a gut level and not even thinking about what you're doing.
Yeah. The metaphor I like to use, Thomas, is every time you redirect yourself to your breathing or to your mantra or whatever meditation object you're using, every time you do that, it's like a small deposit you're making on your well-being account.
Right.
Right?
Oh,
and
absolutely.
if you keep doing that day after day, eventually the compound interest is going to kick in, and you see that you have more than what you thought you had.
Exactly, but you can never retire.
You need to keep doing it.
I mean, you will retire eventually.
This is a very special account. Yes.
Yeah, it's a savings account, right? You can't withdraw.
It's a special account because if you spend a while without depositing anything, it goes into negative interest.
Yeah, absolutely. Real quick. So obviously, since you've been meditating for 18 years, you've had some experiences that have been profound, I would imagine. In fact, you told us the first time you meditated was pretty profound. But has there been one meditation or one that you can think of off the top of your head where you experienced something profound, and maybe not wildly enlightening, but something that just had you, when you came out of the meditation, thinking, wow, either had you thinking a different way or just experiencing something that you'd never experienced before?
In retrospective, I don't think my first meditation was very profound. It was just like I had never experienced myself being just in the present moment with the body and the mind calm. I never had enjoyed that feeling. So that was such a contrast to the life and to the states of mind I was experiencing on a daily level. That's why it had such an impact. But thinking about deep meditation experiences, there are different types. One of them is the experience of bliss. So it's like a full body orgasm, so to speak.
Right.
But it's much more subtle. So
right.
It's like when you go into that space of meditation and you start to feel bliss, it's like your whole body is being bathed with this feeling of joy, of well-being, of right. Everything being perfect as it is, right? And it's kind of indescribable because I don't think there's anything else we can experience in life that gives exactly that same feeling.
Right.
Yeah, it's quite unique. I would say that I've been blessed with a very with a happy life.
Right.
But at the same time, the happiness that I feel when the meditation goes really deep and I tap into that state of bliss, that's unique. That's very different.
I've definitely experienced it on different levels. But the majority of times I experience it on some level when I come out of a meditation, but there's sometimes when it's wildly profound, meaning that during a meditation, I have a connection to absolutely every living thing on the planet, and not just on the planet, but every living thing in the universe. And that sounds very hyperbolic, but that's how it is. That's how I feel. And it's just like you said, it is just a feeling of peace, a feeling of bliss that just overtakes and is felt in every cell of my body. And it's just not my body. It's a connection where you lose track of your body, not in a scary way, not in an overwhelming way, but you are so connected to everything in the universe that a body seems absent in a way. I'm sure you've experienced that. As articulate as I like to think I am, whether my writing or my podcasting, when I try and explain it, I'm just like, It's, and I can't. And I know you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah. The difference is the type of joy or bliss that we can experience in those states. They are more stable. So if we compare with the joy that we experience when we achieve a goal or we get something that we like, that is like it goes up and down, and
right.
There's a short period of time that you experience it, and it's mixed with other emotions and other perceptions. But in a state of deep concentration, that's it. Is like the whole universe is just that bliss for those minutes or seconds that you experience it. So it's felt in a more total, more wholehearted way. That's why it's different, I think.
I absolutely agree, and it kind of goes back to what we were talking about with that savings account. Whereas that if you keep putting that money in, then in the times when you're not meditating, you are feeling more fulfilled, more joyful, more blissful. And it's not so much a bliss that comes from buying a new car, because I've had a guest on the show, Ellen Hendrickson, the Savvy Psychologist. She has her own podcast. She's a great friend, a great woman, very insightful woman. And she talks about, or did talk about, something last week called Hedonic Adaptation, meaning that we get all high when we buy a new car. And then as time goes on, we kind of go back or fall back to our baseline of, you start off, I got a new car. And then a week later, you're like, yeah, it's my car. 2 weeks later, you're like, it's my car. Then, 6 months down, you're like, I need a new car. So we get that high, and then we get that low, and we get that high, and we get that low. But when we meditate, we keep that steadiness so that we're blissful, that we're joyful the majority of times. And of course, not all the time. We'd never want to be happy all the time, but happiness is the default. And we don't go up and down like a roller coaster. We've got a nice baseline of joy. Would you agree? Yes.
So what meditation does is it affects your baseline happiness. It affects so the hedonic adaptation says that after you had an experience that is usually brought you a lot of happiness or a lot of pain, you tend to come back pretty quickly to your kind of baseline of well-being and happiness. And what I see meditation doing is making this very baseline go a level above.
Absolutely.
So it's you're really working on your base. So you're going to still have ups and downs in life, but you're going to fall back to a happier place. Your default is going to be on a higher level.
Exactly. It allows you to get back to that baseline that we were talking about. So if something, quote, bad happens, you don't stay mired in that event. You don't say, oh, woe is me, or this stinks, or this always happens to me. You don't stay there all the time. You go back to what your, quote, bliss baseline is.
Because all those things are thoughts. Notice that all of this, a big part of the pain that we experience in life, it's psychological, right? It's our thoughts. And our mind is not our best friend, but our mind is always with us.
Right.
So that's why it's so important to meditate, because we need to know what is this thing that is always with us and that has absolute power over us to make us feel miserable or blissful. What is this thing, and how can I get a little bit more of control over it? That's the invitation of meditation.
And it's amazing, because I would think there would be more people who have control issues that would want to meditate for that very reason, to teach their mind to say, you know what, I am the, quote, master of you. You are not going to have a thought without me telling you how to think. I would think that more people would want to hop on the meditation bandwagon for that reason, to become controllers of their mind. I mean, of course, you and I know that's one of the hugest benefits for meditation. Last week on Zen Commuter, I was talking about that very thing. I had an episode about seeing thoughts as things, or observing your thoughts, and I had an example. Usually every day, I take a jog or a walk, and then I take a cold shower. In the summer, not that bad. Fall, it's a little tougher. And in the winter, it's just like, my God, is it cold? But I keep doing it. And the other day it was kind of cold, and I was thinking about that in regards to that episode. Why do I think that water is cold? Water is cold because it is a perception I have. It's a thought that I have, and I attribute the cold water and the feelings to that thought. I was thinking about that example of the shower. I was thinking in that moment that when I turn on the shower, the water's going to come out and it's going to be cold. And then I immediately refocus my thinking to say that the water will be as it will be. And if I keep my focus on each of those individual jets, whether it be just seeing the water coming out of those jets, counting the different jets or seeing the different pressures out of those different jets, that my focus will not be on the water being cold. It will be on the observation of the water and the jets. And that's exactly what the case was. I'll be honest, the first time before I turned on the water, I'm like, this is going to be cold. And I'm just regained composure, brought myself back to what the task was at hand, turned on the water, and stared intently at those jets. I didn't experience the cold of the water. In fact, I don't even know if I experienced the water at all in the first few moments. And in fact, as the time went on, I'm like, wow, this water is actually kind of warm. And I just finished up my shower. And I know that's an extreme case because not many people are going to jump into a cold shower like, yeah, Tom, whatever. It's just not going to happen. But it has us understanding that all our thoughts are simply perceptions, things that we've attributed to a thought. And the same is true for, say, petting your dog. You pet your dog and you're like, oh, this is nice. But that thought is not intrinsic to that feeling and that motion. It's a feeling and a perception that you've added to that. Simply petting a dog is petting a dog, and it doesn't feel good unless you add that perception that it does feel good. And when it does, you just keep that feeling going because, of course, you like how it feels. But it doesn't feel that way because it is. It feels that way because you perceive it to be that way. And when you meditate, you have the ability to literally create your life because you can assign different perceptions to different thoughts, and they don't have to be the reaction. But let's shift gears for a little bit. When you talk about or when you teach meditation to an absolute beginner, do you feel that there are some misperceptions that many people have? Or here's a question. What do you think is the major misperception people have when they start out to meditate or when they come to decide to meditate?
Well, there are many, but perhaps the one that is most common is thinking that you need to be able to stop your mind.
Right.
And of course, they're not able to do that, so they get frustrated and they feel like, meditation is not for me. I don't have the talent for it, or whatever it is.
Right.
Because the problem is that there's a confusion between the process of meditation and the state of meditation. Mm-hmm. So if you look at the yogic texts, the state of meditation, when you have mastered that technique to a certain level, you are able to go in a state of thoughtlessness. Right? That's not a state of sleep. You are completely aware. You are more aware than you have ever been, but there's just no thoughts crossing your mind. Right? So that is a state of meditation that is kind of advanced and requires a lot of mastery. Even to experience it for 5 seconds requires a lot of practice.
Indeed.
But that's not what we are talking about. That's not what we are teaching. It cannot be taught. It's something that you arrive at.
Absolutely.
Right? The instruction when you're teaching meditation is the thoughts are going to come and there's nothing you can do about it. But what you can do is decide where you're going to put your attention. And you choose an object for your meditation. Something that you enjoy is better because it's easier to pay attention to something we enjoy. So it could be your breathing. It could be a mantra if you enjoy that better. It could be a visualization of a golden orb if you enjoy that better. Anything, right? So choose your object and place your attention there, right? And try to keep your attention with the object for as long as you can. And invariably, it will wander away into thinking. And in the beginning, you will notice that you forgot everything about your object 15 thoughts down the line. Let's say, right? And they're like, whoa, what am I doing? Then you bring your attention back. But without thinking that you made a mistake, just understanding that that's the nature of the mind. And whether you start meditating today, next year, 10 years from now, next lifetime, it doesn't matter. It's always going to be the same. Your mind is there, and that's what it's been trained to do. It's been trained to jump from thought to thought. That's why they call the mind the drunken monkey, jumping from branch to branch.
Whenever I hear that, I get such an image in my mind of a monkey holding a bottle and he's just jumping from tree to tree. But it's so true.
So that's just the exercise of meditation is just that, you place your attention where you want it to be, and then you keep observing that it's still there moment after moment. And when you notice that it's not there anymore, you should be happy that you notice, because that's progress.
Absolutely.
Then you bring your attention back, right? And maybe next week you notice 12 thoughts down the line rather than 15.
Right, exactly.
And maybe instead of keeping it for 1 second, you keep it for 2, right? And that's progress. And that's something that that you can be happy about. And that's something that for you to be able to have made that little progress, something changed in your brain.
Right.
And that's going to have positive repercussions everywhere else in your life.
Of course, not having expectations when you go into a meditation is going to help with that. But the other thing I urge beginners to do is to see the little victories, whether it be that they had to redirect their focus less than they did the time before, or they had more moments of stillness, whether it be 2 seconds, 3 seconds. Just look for those little wins, because obviously, as I've talked about before on this show countless times, our brains default to the negative. So if we don't take steps to see those wins, we're always going to default to, this stinks, and we're going to give up. But, of course, meditation helps us with that as well. It helps us see our thoughts as neutral. And once again, in Western culture, it's an all-or-nothing kind of mentality. If I don't get it right the first time, then I'm going to quit. Where we really need to, as facilitators, when we're teaching and when you're meditating on your own, to see those little victories.
In the beginning, it's very hard, for instance, to just watch your breath.
Yep.
So you can count your breath. That's much easier. So instead of just watching your breathing sensations wordlessly, just every time you breathe out, you count, let's say 10. Then breathe in, breathe out again, count 9. Breathe in, breathe out again, count 8.
Nice.
All the way to 1. When you get lost, start again from 10. If you don't know what you're doing, what am I doing sitting here? You got lost.
You got way lost.
Right? And then the moment you can go from 10 to 1 without getting lost, that's already a small victory. Once you can go from 10 to 1 without getting lost 3 times in a row, that's even better.
Right.
So little by little, you build that muscle of concentration and awareness.
I think another thing that trips people up is the belief that they can get rid of every thought except one thought, the thought that they have, the thought that they control. And of course, that's just not going to be the case. You're going to need to just see thoughts as things and redirect your breath accordingly. So I think that is definitely a challenge that many people have as well. But let me talk about when you were meditating back in 99, or when you started meditating back in 1999. You said at the beginning of the episode that meditation was still somewhat uncommon, very rare, and a lot of people didn't even know what it was or what you were doing. Now that was then, but now, as I'm sure everybody's aware, meditation and mindfulness is ubiquitous. You hear about it everywhere. How do you think meditation went from something people didn't know about to being everywhere as it is now?
Mostly it's the scientific research that has been published. And scientific research on meditation has been happening since the 60s.
Oh, wow.
But as more and more advanced practitioners like monks, Tibetan monks and Zen monks and yogis, they come into the lab and then they demonstrate that the skills that they have developed through meditation are something quite special and something quite desirable, and that people can achieve that as well if they follow a similar procedure. Then the interest, first in the scientific community to understand what meditation does to your body and your brain happens. And then as they publish these results, then more people start wanting to learn meditation and to teach meditation, because now it's not only something weird that belongs to a cultural group. It's a cognitive exercise that anyone can do, and there are many varieties of this cognitive exercise that require you to believe in nothing, right? Like watching your breath. You don't need to believe in anything, so it's quite universal. Anyone can do it, and the benefits are here. You try and you see how you feel.
And that's a great point that you bring up, because it's sad. Well, it is as it is, but I mean, you make up a great point that it wasn't until science started to say, this is cool, that people said, oh, if it's quantifiable, then I guess it must be okay. Okay, let's fight. Let's do this. Unfortunately, well, I shouldn't say unfortunately, but whatever gets us to where we need to be is a good thing. But I'm a very analytical mind. My dad's a mechanical engineer, and he's a very solid thinker. My mom, when she was alive, was quite the opposite. She was just like, hey, experience life. You don't need to explain it. You don't have to put a number to it or anything. She's just, you don't have to know everything. You just have to be open to experiencing everything. So having that upbringing has helped me a lot. But it would be great if people could just do what you say. Go to a point. It's like, okay, I think there's something to this. I don't need to read books. I don't need to find any scientists. I'm going to meditate with you, with me, with any teacher. And then when they get done, they're like, wow, I feel different. And to our point, 6 weeks down the line, 8 weeks down the line, as air quotes, we'll feel really different. Our brains will be really different. But whether it is science that gets us there or experience that gets us there, I'm just excited that meditation is as widely accepted as it is now.
Yeah. Well, 50 years ago, meditation was not proven to do anything for you.
Right.
But it was still as beneficial as it is today, as beneficial as it is 1,000 years ago, or as it was 1,000 years ago.
Right.
But because it didn't have that seal of approval of science, that science had not looked at it and said that, no, yeah, actually these guys that have been meditating for 4,000 years, they were not wasting their time. There's actually something to it.
That's an interesting point to make.
Yeah. That makes me wonder, like, what other things those traditions promote that there's no proof yet that is beneficial, but that is actually very beneficial.
Right. 50 years down the road, what's it going to be that, like, right now we're like, that doesn't happen. And 50 years from now, it's like, I'm like, yeah, everybody knows that. I'm like, wow, that's kind of wild to think about.
So if you have that mindset, if you have that openness, then you'd say, okay, there's no study about this, but this particular practice, but let me try it and let me see what happens. Right? If you have that openness, then you can learn more quickly. You can adopt things that are not yet mainstream, but are equally beneficial.
And openness is definitely the operative word, because if we stay closed-minded, if we stay surrounding ourselves with the same thoughts we have all the time, then there's no way we're going to experience anything different. We're not going to experience a different life. We're not going to experience the mystery. We're not going to experience anything even close to enlightenment or our version of enlightenment, because we're dealing with the same thoughts. It's going to be important to stretch your mind, whether it be through meditation, whether it be through reading, whether it be through a variety of different avenues, to just see things in a different way, to experience different thoughts, so you have the ability to broaden your mind so that you can see that things are changing. And when you do that and you meditate and you say, hey, you know what? I think things are happening.
So I think that was one of the main reasons for meditation becoming popular, just more scientific studies, more things being published about this, and then more people being willing to try.
And it may have even been a combination of the two. Some people did the studies, some people read the studies, and then those people that read the studies or followed those studies talked to people and said, they didn't recreate the studies, but they said, hey, you know what? There are these studies that have been done, but I tell you what, why don't we just sit down and meditate? And the people that meditated with the people that read those studies didn't need those studies. They just said, hey, I know this is working, or this is really changing me. So between the two, things are happening in a very positive way, which is awesome, I think. Do you think that meditation has the ability to solve some of the challenges that we face in the world today, or help heal some of the challenges that we have in the world today?
Well, meditation helps you to become more aware of yourself. When you're more aware of yourself, you start seeing the type of thoughts and actions that you have that are not helpful for you and that are not helpful for others. When you start realizing that, you start seeing that things like being angry, things like being a chronic complainer, things like hatred, they don't help you. They don't make you any happier.
Right.
And they don't solve the situation either. So when you go into a meditation practice fully, and you take that as a way of life, and you take that seriously, you will start learning a lot about yourself. That will help you let go or transform a lot of negative thought patterns, behavior patterns, negative emotions. And that will make you a better person for society and for those that interact with you. So if you get that and you multiply by thousands and millions all over the world, I have no doubt that a lot of the problems we face now will be mitigated, will be much smaller, or even disappear completely.
What a great thought, huh? I look forward to that time. As I tell people, I'm like, I'll probably be on the other side, but it'll be cool when it happens.
Well, meanwhile, we keep meditating, teaching meditation, and running podcasts on meditation, right?
That's exactly it. And we say that kind of kiddingly, but As I become more aware of meditation and why I'm here on the planet, what I'm supposed to do, how I'm supposed to change the world, I become excited to realize what I can do to make the world better than when I started. And when I think about meditation, that's why I get so excited, because I help people understand their power. And I'm always reticent about saying the word power because I never want people to think about it in the sense of more things, more money, but just a sense of who they are. And also realize that the world is a beautiful place. I'm not a dour guy by any stretch of the imagination. And of course I know that the world has challenges. But I hope that when people meditate, they have the ability to say, you know what, there's some challenges, but there's a lot to be learned from this place we call Earth. There's a lot to be learned on this physical plane. And that's why I get so excited about meditations, that people embrace their power. And not so much their power, like I said, because they have more things, because they have more status. It's a personal power that comes from awareness, a personal power that comes from feeling connected to everything in the universe.
Yeah, it's not power over the other; it's power over yourself.
Right.
It's,
exactly.
Power as choice, as freedom, not as subjugation.
Absolutely. God, I hate that word. Ugh. Subjugation. When I hear that, I'm like, no, nobody should be subjugated.
Yeah.
You obviously have been teaching for quite some time. What is the first thing you help prospective students learn when you're starting out meditation? What is the first step that you take with them? In fact, what would you suggest for people that are just starting out on a meditation journey or developing a meditation practice?
Well, the first step is to have an experience. So to be able to sit with a teacher or with someone that meditates for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever it is, keep it short in the beginning and have a taste for it. Right? Then you can read more about it, understand what are the proven benefits of this practice, what you're trying to achieve, what are the different types of meditation, and little by little get clarity over what you're doing and which technique is best for you. But if I have the person in front of me, I would sit in meditation with that person with a very simple technique, either breathing, either counting your breaths or mantra meditation. This is what I usually recommend for beginners. Mm-hmm. And then see what they experience, what type of questions they have, what that practice did for them, and then develop from that. But if a person already has some knowledge about meditation, he or she already knows what it does, what it is, and they want to get started with it, then I would say choose a technique that you are comfortable with now, right, and decide a time of the day and a place where you meditate. Put an alarm clock or a reminder, anything that will prompt you without fail to do that action, because you're trying to create a habit. Right. Creating a habit can be challenging. So you need a trigger, something that will tell you at this time, in this place, you go and do this action, right? And then you have a result, which is you kind of feel better after that. And then you commit, not tomorrow again, I'm going to 7 a.m. before having breakfast, I'll sit here in the corner of my room and I'll do this 5 minutes of watching my breath again. So yeah, basically decide a place, decide a time, and create a trigger for you, probably an alarm clock. And every day, no matter what, go and do 5 minutes of that practice. Once this habit is established, then little by little start increasing. Increase a minute per week, until you arrive at 20 minutes. That's already a good beginner's practice.
That's a really important point to make, because I think a lot of times, just like I said before, getting back to Western civilization, Western culture, it's an all or nothing kind of deal. People think that when they start off meditating, they have to be able to do it for 20 minutes. And if they can't, well, you know what? It's not for me. I better give up. It's all about consistency, taking little steps, just like with anything, little steps, and just increasing it day by day by day.
Yes.
Live and Dare is going strong, but are there any books that are coming out in your future? Any books you're writing right now? Are there any courses that you're developing right now? What's got you jazzed up right now?
Well, now I'm pretty busy working on my first book, which I cannot say much about because the contract the publisher would not be happy. But what I can say is that it will be published next year in June, so awesome. June 2018, nice. And it will be published in the US, UK, and Australia at the same time by DK, which is a publisher part of the Penguin Group.
Oh,
so pretty big publisher.
Cool, absolutely.
And the book will be, I've read a lot of books about meditation, and I know what's out there, both in terms of books and in terms of website. And I feel that this book will be quite unique. It will be quite helpful for beginners that want to understand the different types of meditation out there and really want to get started in the simplest, easiest, clearest way possible.
Right. I think that's one of the reasons I reached out to you, because I think you and I have a very similar way of looking at meditation, because I think a lot of times if you type in learn how to meditate in a Google search, it sends you to some stuff that's like, wow, like if you didn't know meditation at all, you'd end up with some like psychedelic colors. You'd hear about mantras, mudras, and you're like, what? I'm not going to become a monk. I just want to know how to meditate. So I think a lot of times people get turned off right from the get-go because they still think on some level it's a, air quotes, a woo-woo type thing. And so,
yeah.
And when they go out to do a Google search, some sites, and I know that nobody is some people might be, but I don't think anybody's ill-intended. Obviously some might be, but I think most people come from a good place in their heart. And for the people that have more esoteric views on meditation, it's no better or worse than any other. It's just where they're coming from. And that's definitely why I reached out to you, because I think you and I have a very similar outlook on meditation. Sure, we're aware of the spiritual aspects. Sure, we're aware of its origins, but it doesn't need to be something that we teach to new beginners unless they want to learn that. We want to make meditation accessible to everyone. And when we cut through some of the more arcane or difficult things to comprehend, we make meditation easier for all of us. So that's why I'm excited that you're here, and that's why I'm excited about your book.
Thank you. And that's, as I said, that's the same thing that I saw with the information of meditation out there. And that's what motivated me to start my own blog, because I have the big picture of meditation. I've read so many books about different traditions and been with masters of Buddhism, yoga, like so many different traditions. And I can see the big picture, but I can put myself in the shoes of someone that just wants to meditate for the health benefits.
Right.
Or maybe even more now, okay, they want more than the health benefits. They want actually to go through some personal transformation. They want to get to know about themselves more. But it's very confusing. The information is very unstructured.
Right.
So then I felt like, hey, I can do better than this. I understand how these pieces fit together.
Right.
And that's why I started the blog, just collecting all this information and showing the links and saying like, hey, if you want just a secular point of view, this is all you need to know. If you want to also delve into the spiritual aspects, this is all you need to know. And that's all the different approaches that you can follow with that. And this is how you choose the best approach for you. I didn't find that anywhere else. And I thought that it's a big loss, because it's valuable practice, and you just needed a map to understand what's out there and which of those things are there for you.
Well, there are many people working on it, but I tell you what, you've got the Southern Hemisphere, I've got the Northern Hemisphere. We'll get this done. No big goals. However, there is one question that I ask all my guests before they head on out, and you had the benefit of getting it beforehand. I think I gave it to you beforehand, but real simply, if you had the attention of the entire world, everybody was waiting to hear what you had to say, what is one thing that you would want the world to know?
I would want them to know that their mind is the most important thing in their life. Your mind decides if you're happy or unhappy. Your mind decides what you can achieve, what you will achieve or not in life. The power of your thoughts and your mental states, that will determine everything. How you experience your day-to-day, what your life will be, that's a result of your mind. And yet our mind is not always our best friend.
Right.
Our mind is often out of control. It has a mind of its own, so to speak.
Right.
And if we can learn to understand our own mind better and learn to focus our attention where we want to focus, to transform negative thinking and negative emotions into more positive, more helpful thoughts and emotions, then there's nothing we cannot achieve.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Amen. I agree wholeheartedly. I mean, our mind is the very governing organ of our entire body. How we perceive the world is all going on through our head. And the biggest point you made is that our brains sometimes, most times, work against us unless we take the steps to change them and to have them and not just accept what the default is.
It's like it's your operating system, right?
Oh yeah.
Imagine your computer is your life, and your operating system is messed up. You may have the most beautiful programs installed there, but if your operating system is messed up, nothing much is going to happen.
Yeah, you're not going to get anything done. Before we head on out, though, I would like to know how listeners can follow the great work that you're doing. How can they find you on social media? How do they know when your book's coming out, what courses are coming out? How can they follow all the amazing things that you're doing?
Sure. So the best way would be to go to my blog, liveanddare.com, and you can subscribe to my mailing list where you receive notifications whenever I publish a new post, and that's only about once a month. Cool. And you'll get to know about the courses that I publish and the book when it comes out as well.
Fantastic. Giovanni, this, as I knew it would be, was an amazing hour. So I want to thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me and with my listeners. I'm sure there is so much that they learned from this episode between you and me and all the things we talked about. And I want to wish you continued luck with all the things you're doing. You're doing a great job, and I'm really thankful that you're out there.
Thank you so much, Thomas. It was a pleasure to have this conversation with you and to be able to talk to your listeners.
Exactly.
And I'll be keen to come back whenever you want.
Absolutely, absolutely. It'll probably be before June, I'm thinking. Well, my friend, you go make it an absolutely awesome day, and I'll be in touch.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too. Peace. All right, listeners, I'm going to boast a little bit. I love doing this show because I get to meet such amazing people like Giovanni Densman. I hope you enjoyed the interview between he and I. There's a lot to be gleaned from this episode. And of course, you can head on out to the show notes at zencommuter.com and find all the links so that you can follow Giovanni, find out things that we talked about, links that are pertinent from this episode, all sorts of good stuff. So my friends, you go spend the rest of your day thinking about the things we talked about. I'm going to be back here tonight with another episode of 5 Minute Mojo. But for right now, this is Tom Walters for Zen Commuter signing off, saying make the rest of your day absolutely spectacular.